Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Neeru Tandon, Department of English, VSSD College, Kanpur. We are discussing paper on linguistics. This module number 23 titled WH-movement has been written by Dr. Chaya Jain, Department of English, VSSD College, Kanpur. We all have so many questions in our mind. Why? How? Where? When? If we just leave these words, if we just remove these words, life will be so meaningless and so colorless. We all need questions to move ahead. We all need certain words to ask those questions. So this module is just focusing on not only on these words, but there is a WH movement, there is WH phrases, and how the constraints were put. There are many other questions related with these questions that will be answered in this particular module. In linguistics, there are various types of movement which affects either heads or maximal projections. WH movement is an important phenomena in a language. It is based on government and binding theory. This is a transformational approach of the theory of universal grammar, which was developed by Noam Chomsky in 1980. It is also called as principles and parameters theory, as it accepts that all languages have universal structure principles together with various parameters on a language specific basis. The term WH movement originates from early generative grammar of 1960s and 1970s. It was used as reference to the transformational analysis. The WH expression appeared in its canonical position as deep structure, then moved leftward out of that position to land its derived position at the front of the sentence or clause at surface structure. Now, what is WH words and what are WH phrases? In English, words which start with the letters WH like what, which, who, etc. are called WH words. Technically, the term is applied to words that have these meanings in any language. It doesn't matter what is their sound. Now, WH phrase is a phrase which has WH word called WH phrase. It is somehow characterized as a question operator. For example, in what way, of what size, all these are known as WH phrases. Now we move towards WH phrases. Who, what, which, whose are determiners. You can see on your screen the two tree diagrams are there, and they make it clear how we just keep these words in what category. Who and what are in one category, like whose and which are in other category, and how do we just adjust them in a particular tree diagram. WH words can either form a phrase or be the part of a phrase. For example, what novel did she read? You wonder where he is gone? In first sentence, WH word what is part of the noun phrase, what book, what novel, and in second, it is a part of a phrase, you wonder where he is gone. WH expression is an expression containing an interrogative word with WH like what, when, where, why, who, which, and how. Though how is not exactly the WH word in the category of the above mentioned word like what, when, where, why, who, but even then it is put in this particular category. What is WH movement? We can understand, okay, now it's clear that WH words are those words, they start with WH and they are their interrogative word to ask certain questions. But what is this WH movement and why it is started and when it is started? So, you must know that WH movement, which is also referred as WH fronting or WH extraction, is a special rules of syntax by which interrogative words can be placed at the beginning of an interrogative sentence or clause. They can be used direct as well as indirect questions. For example, which is your book? I asked what she is doing. You see, which is your book is a direct question. I asked what she is doing is the indirect one. Again, in this diagram, you can just find out that it starts with what and then it moves on. This diagram again shows what really WH movement is. In 1997, Culicover said WH movement is also a syntactic process. The term WH movement is applied universally even when the interrogative words do not start with WH. This type of movement is also called as a movement because the landing site of the movement is an A bar movement. It is known as A movement because the landing site of the movement is an A bar movement. According to Radford in 2004, he said WH expression originally occupy a complement position at the end of the sentence. Like, what languages do they speak? They can speak what languages? So, it depends. It's not necessary that they should start the sentence. They can come in between as well. Borsley says that WH expression can also have different functions in the sentences. Who did Ras see? That is creating the object of a verb. Who did he give the pen to? Now he is the object of a preposition. I repeat, WH words can also be used in relative clauses. A sentence or clause which contains WH word shows a special word order as it appears at the front of the sentence or clause. Just a very common sentence, what is your name? According to GB theory, WH movement is studied as constituent movement, where the WH phrase originates in D structure, moves up to a higher position in the sentence and leaves behind a silent trace. Chomsky defined that WH movement must have the following features, that is, within square brackets plus WH under com. It attracts a WH phrase to join it in the specifier position. The rule of WH movement has the following characteristics. It leaves a gap. Where there is a bridge, there is an apparent violation of subjunctive, PIC and SSE. It observes CNPC. It observes WH island constraints. Now, what is the typology of WH movement? There are different types of WH movement which are present in language. Overt WH movement. It is also called as obligatory, which contains the movement of all WH phrases as S structure. Bulgarian language has this kind of movement. For example, that is written on your screen and it means what did who buy. Covert WH movement. This type of movement is also called non-existent, which contains that S structure. No WH phrases move at all but stay in their original syntactic position. In Japanese language, this kind of movement is present. For example, you can see on your screen something written in Japanese which means who did Taro give what? That has been discussed by Richards in 2002. Partly overt movement. In this movement, at S structure, one WH phrase is moved and other is remained in situ. English language is the example of this movement. Let us have some more examples of WH movements. Given examples show WH movement. In each pair, first sentence has the canonical word order of a declarative sentence and second sentence shows WH movement. The related words are bold. You can see Priya has been reading Adhika. Who has been Priya reading? Here the direct object corresponding to Adhika has been WH movement as the WH word who. In English language, WH movement takes place to form a question, but there are three types of questions in which this movement does not occur even when the question word serves as a subject. Like echo questions. She bought what? Quiz questions. Mahatma Gandhi was born in which country? Multiple questions. Who went where? The term pied piping was first used by John R. Ross in 1967. When a fronted WH word pulls the whole WH phrase to the front of the clause, it is called pied piping. This can be both obligatory and optional. Obligatory pied piping means the whole encircled phrase must be fronted with WH expression. For example, Jimmy is writing a story book. What book is Jimmy writing? Pied piping of book. What is Jimmy writing a book? Pied piping not occurred. There are two types of questions, direct and indirect. Direct question is expressed with main clause and indirect question with subordinate clause. WH movement takes place in both the questions. There is a keyword order differences that differentiate the both. Ravi will ask Mohan to go. Who will Ravi ask to go? This is a direct question. I wonder who Ravi will ask to go. Indirect question. When WH movement takes place in main clause, finite verb presents in second position and in indirect questions, infinite verb present in third position. There are certain constraints on WH movement. The first one is the island constraints. In 1967, Ross argued that WH movement is not actually unbounded. He introduced the term island to refer to frameworks that do not allow a WH phrase to escape from them. There are different types of islands: adjunct islands, WH islands, subject islands, left branch islands, coordinate islands, complex noun phrase islands, and non-bridge islands. In direct and indirect questions, WH phrases have their position as a result of movement. When WH phrase moves out of the CP, where it arises are called long distance WH movement. It is also known as long or non-local movement. Certain examples are there. What was she writing? What did she say that she was writing? What does he think that she said that she was writing? What is she claiming that he think that she said that she was writing, etc., etc. We also have adjunct island. This is formed from an adjunct clause. WH fronting is not possible out of an adjunct clause. Relative clauses and clauses with because, if and when comes under adjunct clause. Some examples are: John likes the woman who wears a sari. What does John like the woman who wears what? The attempt to extract out of an adjunct clause fails. When we talk about WH islands, it is formed by an extraction of WH phrase from a declarative clause in an embedded sentence in which WH word is present. It is weaker than adjunct island. For example, Jimmy asked why Ravi was waiting for John. Who did ask Jimmy ask why Ravi was waiting for? Then we have subject islands. In English, WH fronting is not possible out of subjects, but it is quite possible in object clause and phrases. For example, the myth about the king was funny. Who was the story about dash funny? Now we have left branch islands. Ross has introduced the term in 1967. The left branch constraints are modifiers that precede the noun that they modify. They carry the fact that possessive determiners and attributive adjectives inevitably pied pipe the entire noun phrase when they are moved. For example, John bought a costly car. How costly did John buy a car? Extraction from left branch under a noun fails. How costly a car did John buy? That is the question. If noun phrase is pied pipe, extraction succeeds. Coordinate structure island are also there. A conjunct in a coordinate structure may not be moved out of that coordinate structure. If extraction affects the conjuncts of the coordinate structure, equally then extraction out of a conjunct of a coordinate structure takes place. It is also called across the board ATB extraction. For example, Susan gave a book to me and loaned a pen to her. What did Susan give to me and loan to her? ATB extraction succeeds. Noun phrase islands. From a noun phrase, extractions are difficult. WH movement cannot cross more than one CP at a time. It also cannot cross a DP and a CP in the same step. This constraint is called complex noun phrase constraints. It has two forms: the banning extraction from the clausal complement of a noun and banning extraction from a relative clause which modifies a noun. For example, we hired a man who speaks a South Asian language. What a South Asian language did we hire a man who speaks? This is the extraction out of the complex noun phrase fails. Then non-bridge verb island. That clause which acts as complements when extraction is possible out of object to verb shows islands like behavior if the matrix verb is a non-bridge verb. For example, Meeta thinks she died in her sleep. How does Meeta think that she died? Extraction out of the object clause. Then Meeta shouts that she had died in her sleep. Now this extraction is across a non-bridge verb which says, how does Meeta shouts that she had died? Now then we have relative clauses as instances of WH movement. We have WH relative clause. In English, both questions and WH relative clauses are start with WH phrase. Where do you find him? That's a question. The place where you find him is a clause. In relative clause, WH movement is an idea that's supported by the fact that WH relative clauses show the whole range of island effects. It also shows the comp trace effect. The WH relative pronoun moves to CP and the syntactic head of the clause is a silent complementizer. It is like an indirect question. This is clear from this particular diagram that how do you place certain words in the structure of the language. That relative clause is parallel to WH relative clause, but in that relative clause complementizer is easily seen and WH phrase that is silent. That relative clause does not show the comp trace effect which has a gap in subject position. We also have doubly marked relative clauses. In Middle English and in vernacular varieties of other languages, doubly marked indirect questions are authenticated. They are not accepted in modern standard English. There are some examples from the Penn Helsinki parsed corpus of Middle English. Thy friend which that thou hast lorn, your friend that you have lost, that is there in modern English. In the same way, the next sentence in the modern English we can read the fire of anger and wrath which he should quench, and that was told in the old English way where the spelling of all the words are different, or rather you can say they are not the same as we have today in today's modern English. Zero relative clauses. There are some clauses that are not introduced by any overt element at all. Such clauses are also possible in English and known as zero relative clause or contact relative clause. For example, the animal dash dash I saw, the place dash dash you prefer. The correct assessment of zero subject relative clauses is not exactly clear, but it has been argued that such relative clauses are grammatical but avoided for processing. Sometimes they are misinterpreted as the predicate of the matrix clause when they modify subjects. For example, a person lives in the plains has a unique feature. Henry in 1995 claims that zero subject relative clauses are not real relative clauses. WH movement is there in other languages as well. In other languages of the word WH movement is found like German, Spanish, French. They are closely related to English, and WH fronting is a common phenomena in these languages as well. In most of the languages, WH words are placed at the beginning of the sentences. The islands to WH extraction are also found in different languages. It is true that there are variations, but it is general process. Here are some examples of different languages examples. Like the sentence, who did John give what, is said in a different way in Japanese and Chinese, and that is just visible on your screen. In Bulgarian, WH phrase in a sentence is raised. In English, when we say who sees whom or who whom sees, in the same way it is written in Bulgarian on your screen. In French, there is an alternate between moving the WH phrase or leaving in situ. To whom did she give the watch? That is written in French on your screen. Egyptian Arabic uses similar ways as French. What did you hear in German is written over there, and who does he read every evening is again there. So you can see that sentences, they are in German, then also the spelling is WEN, but these words are there at the beginning of the sentence. To summarize, I will say that WH words are interrogative words which are used to form questions. When we say WH words, we have why, who, which, when. When you can answer, you can question me that how is not a WH word? It doesn't start with WH, but even then it has both W and H. It is HOW. So because being an interrogative word, it also comes in this particular list. Whenever we talk about these WH words, we know about their position in linguistics as well as in English language. Particularly, not only English language but so many languages, other languages of the world, they also use certain such words to form questions. Thus, it is interesting to note to what extent we use them as phrase and to what extent we just use them as word. So this WH movement, previously it was just not accepted by many linguists, but finally it is in practice and people are doing work over this WH movement. Thank you for visiting EPG Pathshala.